In my previous gyro gain mix setup video, I showed on Ethos 1.4 how to use the mixes to set up the gain channel to operate from 0 to 100%, which is the operating value range for the gain channel of the stabilized receivers. And I had it just set up on a potentiometer. In Ethos 1.5, the mix setup has changed slightly. So in this video, I'm going to show how to set up this same mix in Ethos 1.5, as well as an alternative method of controlling the gain using the new Vars feature of Ethos 1.5 and utilizing either the additional trim like T6 on the X20R, X20RS, X20 Pro, and X18. Or if you don't have the additional trims, you can also utilize the function buttons down below as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the model setup, model select, and create a brand new model. When I click on create model, it'll start up the model wizard, which is pretty much the same as in 1.4. However, now in Ethos 1.5, it's going to prompt if you're using a self-stabilizing receiver from FrSky. In this case, in this video, I'm using the Archer Plus SR10 Plus. So over here under receiver, I'm going to click on that and then select the Archer Plus SR10 Plus. When I click on the next page, it'll go through the normal setup, asking you how your engine, ailerons, flaps, and tail configuration are with the standard model wizard setup. However, at the end, now it's also going to prompt to assign the inputs for the gain, the stab mode 1, and the stab mode 2. Now, stab mode 2, most people can just ignore this because it's only relevant if you're using hover or knife edge modes with the quick mode setting disabled on the receiver. But for most basic setups, you only need the gain adjustment setup and the stab mode 1. So for my gain adjustment, I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to move my pot, which will automatically assign it to that gain adjustment. For the stab mode 1, I'll also click on that, and now I'll toggle this top left switch, which is the SE switch that I would like to use for my stabilization modes. Now that's going to just be auto level, regular stabilization, and off, gyro off, for the basic quick mode enabled setup of the receiver. So I'll click next. It'll ask to confirm the channel configuration, and I'll click next again. And in this case, I'm just going to name this model the Archer SR10 Plus and click next. Now, when I go into the mixes, you'll see that it's automatically assigned gain adjustment, stab mode 1, and stab mode 2 to the appropriate channels. Since I'm not using stab mode 2, I'm just going to click on it and then delete it. And I'll clear the name out of that output channel. For the stab mode 1, it's going to use my 3-position SE switch, and for the gain, it's going to use my pot 2. But you'll see that it's currently using the range -100 to +100. So the way to correct that is basically the same way that I showed in my last video, where we'll be adjusting the weights and the offset so that it operates from 0 to 100%. So I'll go into the gain adjustment channel and click on edit, and you'll see that the weight is currently set to 100%. I'll click on the weight and edit that, and now I'll reduce that down to 50%, just like on my last video. You'll see that it's still not quite there because we still need to add the offset that will bring that up into the range of 0 to 100. So I'll click under new, add a new action, and for the action, I'll choose offset. And now on the offset when active, I'll set that to 50%, which raises that range up to the 0 to 100% range. So you can see now with the pot all the way to the left, it goes down to 0, and all the way to the right is at 100%. However, I really don't like to use this method anymore because as you're switching from one plane to another, you have to try to remember where your pot was set for each individual gain from one plane to another, because one plane may fly well with the gain down here and another may fly well with the gain a bit higher. So the new method that I prefer to use is actually using the new Vars feature of 1.5 and assigning the gain into a var which is persistent from one model to another, so that it will remember the last gain setting that you had for this particular model and the other models that you have set up. So under the model setup, I'll scroll over to Vars and add a new var. I'm going to just call this gain var. And for my range, I'm going to set this to 0 to 100. So this is going to automatically limit the range of the gain to be within that 0 to 100% that it wants to see on that channel. Next, I'm going to scroll down to actions. When I click add a new action, it'll bring a new line down here with the function of add. This is going to be your active condition, and this is the value that will add to the overall gain variable. So under the active condition for this action, I'm going to choose my T6 to the right, because as I click it to the right, I want my gain to increase, and as I click it to the left, I want my gain to decrease. So when I click that trim to the right, you'll see it automatically selects T6 to the right, and I can click out of that, and now I want to add a value of 5 each time that is clicked. So you see up here where my value is, that's grayed out, currently at 0%. As I click this button to the right, you'll see that increment by 5% each time. Now I'm going to do the same thing, adding a new action, but this time I'll use the function of subtract. And then I want this to be on my trim 6 to the left. So when I click it to the left, you see it selects T6L. And again, I just want it to increment each time by 5% value. So I'll select 5% value. As you can see, the value of that var is currently at 25%. And as I click my T6 to the left, now it's decreasing by 5% each time. And when I go to the right, it increases that var by 5%. One thing that's kind of annoying is that it still thinks that it's a trim. So it will call out trim center, trim minimum, and trim maximum as well. So to fix that, basically what you have to do is just back out here, scroll over to your trims section, and then down at the bottom where it has T6 trim, I'm going to change this mode from easy mode just to off, so that it's no longer thinking that it's a trim. It will still operate that var value. So see, it's currently at 85. But as I push that button, that trim switch to the left, it's decreasing by 5, and to the right, increasing by 5. So it's still working. Now, if you don't have the T6 trims, the extra trims like on the X20R, RS Pro, or X18, you can also use these momentary switch buttons down here. First, you'll just want to make sure that your function switches under the edit model are set to momentary. Then over here under the Vars, instead of using the T6R and T6L as the active conditions, I can just click the up or top one if I want it to go up, and it will choose function switch 4. And then likewise for the subtract function, I'll click this bottom one, which is function switch 6, and it will activate the subtract 5. So now as I click these buttons down here, you can see that it will increment by 5 or decrease by 5. So I'm just going to set this back to operate off of my trim switch for now, because that's how I prefer. And now the last thing you need to do to actually get that to operate that gain channel is under the mixes, gain adjustment. I'll edit this, and for the source, I'm going to set that to Vars, gain var. Now, because I've already set the weight and offset here, it's acting a little funky, but basically what you'll do is just have this at your normal 100% default weight. And because I've limited the range of that var to 0 to 100%, even though I click it further to the left, it doesn't go below 0%. And over to the right, it will max out at 100%. So with the default mix setup with weight at 100%, you can choose your var and limit it on the range. Under the outputs for the channel 13, you can see as well, as I operate this trim switch, it's decreasing down to 0%, and that's the minimum, and then increasing up to 100%, which is the maximum. Now the last thing that I like to do is set up a call out so that as you're clicking your gain up and down, it will call out the value of the var or the channel that it's operating, that it's currently set to. So under the logic switches section, I'm going to add a new logic switch. For the function, I'm going to choose this triangle with the bars around it, which is absolute delta greater than x. So it means the absolute change is greater than x value. And in this case, I'm going to call this the gain callout logic switch. For the source, I'm going to choose again my var, gain var. Value will just be 1%. And the delay before inactive will be 0.1 second. So you can see right now it's currently inactive. And as I click this button, it will become active for a brief period, brief moment, and then deactivate again. And again, here you can see as I click it, it becomes active briefly and then deactivates. Now the last thing I need to do is under the special functions, add the audio call out to trigger that triggers off of that logic switch. So I'll add a new special function. Type or action will be play audio. I'm just going to go ahead and enable it. For my active condition, I'll click on that and choose logic switches, gain call out. I'll just leave it as voice 1 default. And then down at the bottom, add a new line in the sequence. For the type, I'm going to choose play value. And for the source, you can either just choose the vars gain var, or you can choose the channel 13 gain channel. Now, as I operate
55%, 60%,
the trim switch, you can hear that it's calling out the current value of my gain. And likewise, you can also come over here to your configure screens, add a new screen, however many boxes you like. I'll just choose 4 boxes, change the widget to display a value, and then display the value of my gain var. And now from my home screen, you can also see that the gain value
50%, 45%,
is being displayed.
40%, 35%, 30%.
So that's just a couple different ways to set up your gain adjustment channel to operate either off of the potentiometer, which is the older style way of doing it, which is not really recommended anymore, or how to use the new Vars section to create a gain variable triggered off of your trim switches to add and subtract a certain value to the var. Now realistically too, you can probably even adjust this range to operate between, let's say, 10% to 90%, because generally speaking, you're never going to want to operate the gyro at less than 10% gain or higher than 90% gain. But just for consistency's sake, I'm showing it here with the 0 to 100% range, because that's what the channel value expectation is for the channel 13 gain adjustment channel.